Hi, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Konrad Kollnig, and I'm a current PhD student at the Computer Science Department of the University of Oxford. Motivated by Apple's new privacy measures on iOS, my colleagues and I set out to investigate the effects of these measures on app privacy. On the one hand, Apple introduced the so-called App Tracking Transparency Framework, the ATT. This allows end users to choose which apps are allowed to track them and which are not. On the other hand, Apple also introduced so-called privacy nutrition labels, which are meant to show to end users what data apps collect and for what purposes. Both of these measures were rolled out as part of iOS 14, starting December 2020. As regards our methodology, we looked into roughly 1,800 apps. For each app, we looked at one version from 2020 and one version that has been updated to comply with the new rules. To get a rich sense of what privacy measures apps implement, we consider both apps' code in a code analysis and apps' network traffic. This is building on methodology from earlier research from our research group. Our findings are fourfold. Firstly, we find that tracking is indeed more difficult now than it used to be. Apps cannot just access the IDFA anymore, the identifier for advertisers, which really used to facilitate cross-app tracking back in the days and pose a privacy threat to end users. However, Apple's new privacy rules seem to have sparked a counter movement by tracking companies. Specifically, we found a real-world example of apps circumventing the ATT through device fingerprinting. These apps managed to agree on a mutual user identifier through the use of a third-party server. We also find out that many apps still widely include tracking libraries and that this hasn't changed much. This is probably due to the fact that app developers have just not changed their code base in response to the ATT. We also point out notable gaps in apps' definition of tracking. Apple excludes group-level tracking, which may still affect individuals significantly rather than just at the individual level. Apple also excludes tracking related to credit scoring, which can be particularly problematic for affected individuals. Lastly, Apple excludes first-party tracking, which is commonly done by Google, Facebook, and Apple itself. We even provide evidence of Apple tracking users in ways other companies are not able to, and point out that Apple says in its privacy policy that it may use the collected information for its own advertising services. Lastly, we found that the new privacy nutrition labels were sometimes inaccurate and can be misleading for end users. We observed that particularly in less popular apps.